I wanna be like. I wanna be like you and holy, sanctified and true, full of fire, purpose and love. Like you, I wanna be like you, humble and free. I wanna be like you. 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 Pure and holy, sanctified and true, full of fire, purpose and love. Like you, I wanna be like you, humble and free. I wanna be like you. I wanna be like you. Oh, I wanna be like you. Glory, it's glory, glory, it's your glory, glory, it's glory, it's glory, it's your glory. The angels bow down because you're true and holy and full of majesty. Your glory, your glory, your glory in creation. For you alone are worthy.
How you doing?
You hear me?
You had gone out, but I just heard you say that.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I hear you perfectly. Good evening. You had gone out, but I just heard you say that.
It's a few more guests. And my wife is going to join me today.
Excellent. I'll just wait patiently till we get started. I'm good.
wide world turns we sow. Fortune can fade, riches and gold only have one but soul.
Hey, Pastor Teresa, how are you? Hey, Elder Mark.
Bless you, bless you.
Hello.
We work overseer. He gonna get there. Praise the Lord.
I see George Worsley. Okay, let me see it. I think.
You hear me now?
Okay. Can you see we have, this is our first time
Testing.
trying to persons, but let's do a check. Are you there? George, are you there? Okay. Elder, how are you? Elder Mark Stephen Lewis, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Tyler Cook.
I am here, and now it sounds like I hear you better.
Brother George.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I know
I hear you loud and clear.
I don't know if I can. I can hear.
Yeah, let's turn your picture. Your picture is sideways. Whatever way you have the picture, turn it. Yeah, there we go. Marcus Harley, how are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Great. So I have my buddy Kyle here with me, and I'm just going to put in a stream here of what we're doing today.
Somebody may have their phone turned up.
Backlash, but we have
preparing the echo. Is somebody's phone?
Okay, George, do you have your phone turned up? Okay, if somebody could turn their phone off, and let me turn my phone down too. That's better. See, it was me. Look at there. I'm trying to work all of these devices here, and it's fun, even though we be messing up bad. It's a lot of fun. Well, I want to thank God for all of you who are here with us today. The topic that we want to deal with today is dad trauma and mama drama. Somebody else, do you have your phone? That may be your phone. I have your phone there. So I'm going to add a banner in here and stroll across the bottom as a so gracious and Father, we thank you for this day. This is the day that you have made, and we're rejoicing and we're glad in it. We're glad because you're good, glad because you're great, glad because you're glorious. We ask that you would look on us and listen to us and guide us as we share in this needful and this crucial and important conversation that whoever may be listening in present or in the future by recorded video, that they may hear something that will challenge them to change their lives and change their course. God bless us and strengthen us and continue to guide us along this journey today. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so I'm glad to have everyone here. And one of the things that really led me to this conversation today is seeing everything that's going on in our country with the pandemics, that being of racial injustice, primarily targeted towards the African community, but African American males, not to leave out females too. Breonna Taylor, and already a few years ago, Sandra Bland, and then we have George Floyd, and we have so many young African Americans that look like us. And because we are on this side of the conversation, meaning that those of you, and I'm gonna let you introduce yourselves, those of us who have had the benefit of what we're talking about today, and what we are conversating about the effects of the parental education. To put it in summation, parental education is how we were reared. When we look at psychology and sociology, Albert Bandura, social learning, and then you have covert emotional development. So to sum it up, is that our first models and who we followed are our parents. If we were raised by a single parent, raised by two family households, whatever our parents showed us. And then from there on to our community and our school setting, those who we looked up to. And that's where we show up a lot today, seeing the pandemic and the economic pandemic, as well as the health pandemic, and then to hear those urban centers, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, those shootings and black on black violence. We want to address and really call to the attention and forefront that behavior. It's what I call the outgrowth of dad trauma and mama drama. So let's deal with that. And we're just going to go in the circle, as we call you. You can introduce yourself. You don't have to introduce yourself. That's fine. But I called everybody to this table because I know you have something of quality and of essence to say. So I'm going to start with Dr. Cook.
Well, hello, good evening, and thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation and discussion with all of the panels, and also with the listening audience that's on. I am a licensed psychologist in private practice, and I'm part of a lot of the work that I do is in trauma-informed care, particularly for court-involved individuals and families and children. Also, I am a minister at Bethlehem Judah Christian Fellowship in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where Bishop Anthony Gilliard is the senior pastor. And finally, I do have a ministry on Being Well, where I really focus on integrating faith into the conversation about mental health.
Okay. Elder Mark Stephen Lewis, my co-host.
Yes, sir. We give God praise for being here and being a part of healthy dialogue. The simplicity and the importance of dialogue is one of the key components to therapy, meaning using what God has given us, which is 2 ears and 1 mouth, to be quick to hear, as the Bible teaches us, slow to speak, slow to wrath, with working out the righteousness desires that God desires. So I think a good component to dealing with dad trauma and mama drama is actually being a good listener to whatever the conversation or whatever we discussed today, and make a valuable and pertinent assessment to help and empower those who are listening.
Okay. Bishop Hawley.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be on the call with everyone. I guess what I can bring to the table is I have somewhat of a PhD of dad trauma and mama drama, for lack of a better term. But I'm just glad to be here and be a part of the conversation.
Thank you. And George Worsley. Hey, George, are you there? Okay, we're going to get back to George. I think his screen may have frozen because he been holding that pose there for a minute. And I know that may not be let me add him again. Hey, George, are you there? George, you hear me? Okay. So I'm going to start. I'm glad I have my buddy with me today because I can step out and troubleshoot what is going on. Okay, there he's going in and out. Hey, George Worsley, how are you? Okay, so let's go to Dr. Cook. George, you can say something whenever you have the opportunity to, so we know that you're in the conversation. But Dr. Cook, first, let's deal with trauma. What is trauma?
Well, when we think of trauma, we really think of it as anything that is overwhelming, any experience that is emotionally intolerable. Really is what trauma is. And a lot of times we talk about it in the form of like big T's and little T's. So there's huge traumas like an assault or a house fire or a death or excuse me, sexual assault. And then there are other traumas that happen in relationship where there is a moment or an experience that is just shocking to the self, and it becomes what is traumatic. It becomes something that changes the way we see ourselves or we see others or we see the world. And, you know, trauma is an experience that's really fragmenting to the self. And a lot of times it really is more physiological. So we're experiencing it in our body and we're holding it in our body. And it's not always something that can be articulated in language. So that's a few things around how I would describe a trauma.
Okay, so when we talk about dad trauma, and not only just dad trauma, but mama trauma, in summation, we sum it up as saying dad issues or mom issues. Like when we're in relationships, we talk about being in issues with, you have mom issues or you have dad issues. So when we go through our life experiences and the vicissitudes of life, and we have those problems that we have to navigate through and develop through. It's one thing working in school system with urban children. I often tell my colleagues and try to speak up for the kids in terms of their ability sometimes to grasp things, recapitulate it to us in terms or ways that we would like for them to bring it back. And I often say, as it speaks of Bandura's theory, social learning theory, that some of our kids don't have the self-efficacy, which means that they don't feel sufficient enough to tackle that problem, or that problem, or whatever the issue may be. And even though they may be resilient kids, but they just don't have that self-esteem, that courage, and that ability and the confidence to really just stand up. And we have to be patient with them and navigate through it. So what are some of the things that you have seen, Bishop Holly? I know you work in the school system too in North Carolina, which find also a lot of issues there with students, just the environment. When I say the environment, down in the deep south is a very challenging environment.
Well, when you dealing, especially dealing with the children that I deal with, I deal with elementary school kids, and it has become painful to see that elementary school children deal with every bit as much as the high school, middle school, and college children deal with. We've had situations where mother and father are not together. The child is awarded to the mother, but we've had to call the police because dad wants to come get the child. We've dealt with that. I've dealt with having to. At times, I'm certified for excuse me, for physical traumatic stress and things like that. And so I've had to deal with children who have rage issues, where I've had to restrain children. I mean, literally restrain children who have issues. Dad is gone now. Mom is married to another female. Dad is gone. There's a new dad in the house, so forth and so on. And so the sons and daughters, and going through their problems and having their issues. So we've had to deal with these things quite a bit, and it's just as not so much to say as an educator, but as a person, it's very painful to watch a 9-year-old, 7-year-old crying out and lashing out because of the things that they're dealing with as a result of what's going on in their home, and not really being able to do so much about it. When we were children, when we were coming up, there was two answers. The first answer was, don't get yourself together. I'm going to help you get yourself together. And that usually involved somebody's hand or about 36 to 42 inches of cowhide on your behind. And then the other part was prayer. The sad thing about it is there's not a lot of prayer going on, and there's not a lot of rearing and reprimanding going on in dealing with the children as much now, because the parents want to be friends with their kids as opposed to being their parents. And so the children, of course, some children take advantage of that and they go their own way. We locking up real good.
Yeah, that's indeed. Those teachers.
Got a lot of internet issues going on.
Definitely.
Going today. But listening to your background, I might need to make an appointment.
Well, I was listening, when you were kind of talking about the children and you were talking about the parents, and just, staying on, just being on topic. And I was thinking a lot of the times, you know, when we talk about the dad trauma, the mama drama, first of all, the mama drama is trauma, you know, because it really is trauma, is how we show up in the world. And as you were talking about children and parents, I was thinking that very often what has happened is that parents have unaddressed trauma, they have unaddressed emotional pain. And so that's showing up in their life, and sometimes it's showing up in their parenting. And therefore, you know, you have children and parents that are doing the best that they can with what they have.
Yes.
And then, like, when you started to talk about the anger and like the depression and all of those various things that we start to see, very often that also is just trauma, but it's the ability to see it, because so often it's being acted out.
Yes.
Because it's the only way that it can be expressed. And sometimes, you know, people don't have the words to articulate their experience. So it's just being acted out upon.
Yes. Yeah. I know my as she gets older, my daughter is 25, and the first thing that usually comes out of her mouth is like, you know, Daddy, a spanking is not the answer for everything. And I say to her, I said, you're absolutely right, but you have to understand something. I learned that as time went on. When we were kids, you know, and we would, you know, we didn't call it spanking. You know, we wish we got spanked when we were kids. We got what we got our butts whooped.
Right.
And so when we were coming up, whether it was the answer or not, it was the thing that seemed to some way somehow level the field. Like, okay, now that we've gotten that part out of the way, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Do you understand that I'm in control and you're not? Yes, I'm okay, Mommy. I'm okay, Daddy. Okay, now let's sit down and talk. But it's you know, it's just interesting how things have changed, and we have gotten, you know, and we have gotten to the point as to where what gave us, I would say to a degree, what gave us a good foundation as when we were children, it's changed as parents and as educators, where we don't, I won't necessarily use the word question it, but we spend all of our time asking the question, is the foundation that we have, or is the foundation that we were given, is it good enough? Or is it strong enough, or is it something that we should continue to subscribe to, or something to do something, or should we be doing something else?
I think we have everyone back on, but someone's phone is up.
Yeah, like a direct.
Pastor Davis, are you back? Okay, no. Hi, Elder Mark. Can you hear us?
Yes, true. Trying we pray to through the print these airwaves.
Is your phone up by any chance, Elder Mark?
I only have my phone on the lab. I'm on a laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I just to make sure it wasn't me, I just turned I turned my phone off to make sure that it wasn't me.
Yeah, my phone's not on. My phone's not on
to make sure it wasn't me, I just turned I turned my phone off to make sure that it wasn't me. So.
Yeah, my phone's not. I'm not even on the phone. I'm on the laptop.
So it's someone else.
Let me see. If I go on mute.
You're on mute now.
Yeah, he's on mute now. So
you're on mute, but we don't hear the background noise.
Right, we don't hear. Yeah, but unfortunately, we don't hear him.
We don't hear you either.
if I go on mute, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the echo.
I don't have no background noise, do I?
Yeah, no, the echo is gone.
I do it, yeah.
Yeah, the echo is gone now, but so is overseer. So overseer this is probably coming through his phone. You know, I keep telling y'all. I keep telling him.
Overseer busy. He busy over there. He got too much going on over there.
I keep telling him to let that iPhone stuff go, man. I'm telling you, Galaxy, Samsung is the way to go. But he keep hanging on. He hanging on to that.
Oh,
he keep hanging on to the Apple stuff. I'm telling you, you need to upgrade. Go to the Galaxy.
I concur.
Right, Galaxy.
Android all day.
I do not. Dr. Cook, you have a Galaxy?
I
also?
upgraded to the Note 10, but it's an Android. So it's Samsung.
Okay, so listening audience, we get some feedback from them. What they say is it's echoing. So until we let everybody mute until I call on you to have a remark and improve the conversation. Okay, so just mute and not yeah. Okay, George, are you still there? We haven't heard from you yet. Are you there, George? George, I see you. We want to hear your voice. We see your beautiful face. Okay, George, can you introduce yourself and bring a comment in?
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Talking.
Okay, if you could turn your volume up a little bit.
Okay. I'm getting. Obviously, this was a topic that we discussed earlier, and something to come in. I understand we're having some technical difficulties, but the reality is that our young people
If you just speak up a little, speak up a little louder. Inside voice.
My connection is bad.
Oh,
I have a very poor connection.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Just give us your comment on the issue.
You can hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna make it quick. Obviously, this is a very delicate subject, but it's a very important subject at the same time. We see the devastation that's caused with this problem between dysfunctional households, single women raising children by themselves on a daily basis. It's unfortunate. It's only been exacerbated with this coronavirus, as well as the seeing in the federal government. When we had to go and do everything for the students to get them in line, I saw a lot of problems with the families, a lot of things that are very difficult as we go forward in September. So, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Okay. Let's go to Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook. Speaking, you talked about it a little. Speak more to the aspect of how we show up as adults and as young adults, and as teenagers, and as primary school, middle school students, in the trauma experience from absent dad was abusive. I call the when you have our own emotional baggage and guilt that we bring and ride with guys who are in those conditions and in those states.
You were breaking up, so I really didn't get everything. I think you were saying speak to a little bit more about how we show up. I heard that part.
Right.
Okay, I know there was more to that.
Good. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're frozen, possibly frozen on some ends.
Our own personal experiences. How can we begin to help?
I think we're kind of moving into so what now? What can we do?
Say again.
I think were you moving kind of into so what can we now do about what we're seeing?
Yes. Right.
So I think I guess I'm thinking a couple of things. I think as a community, and particularly with so much that has gone on, with coronavirus, with police brutality, police killings, the fact that we are quarantined, we're not moving around as much, that we have to begin to pay more attention, not only to the world in a way that's uninterrupted, but even to ourselves. And I think about this month because this is Black, Indigenous, people of color mental health month, which used to be Minority Mental Health Month, but now we speak of it as, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And really highlighting our experience, highlighting the adversities that we have had, highlighting the trauma that has been real. And maybe for, a moment in history, and for really the first time having not everybody on board, but we really are seeing that it's not just us that are speaking about what has occurred, what has happened to us. There's an acknowledgement that, that in terms of being in this country, living in this country, and what the history has been, and what continues to happen on a day-to-day basis is traumatic. It is unfair. So I feel like we are in a moment of time that we can really begin to take advantage of, and we can really begin to address a lot of what has happened to us in a lot of different ways. One, I think the fact that we are giving voice to our experience is powerful. I think the fact that it's being done in a collective way, because very often the experience of trauma is very isolating, and it's an experience that there's so much aloneness. But in this moment, there's a lot of togetherness. There's a lot of reality checks, and the understanding that, we have gone through a collective experience, I think is important, and is powerful. I think even, the church has begun to address uh, our experience, and I see a lot more conversations and discussions from churches that have, either mental health professionals in the congregation, and they're coming to speak, or even have ministries that are beginning to address some of these things. And then I do think there's also, a recognition that it's okay to get help, that it's okay to go to a professional. I'm not suggesting that there aren't still barriers. Definitely there are barriers, but I think with so much of a focus and so much of a public conversation and discussion, and people saying, like, I did it and it was helpful for me, the recognition that yes, we can go and we can get help. I think there are still many more opportunities for us to create like safe spaces, really within our community, and collective conversations about what our experiences are, and therefore how we are showing up, and then beginning to give some strategies around how we can begin to shift and how we can begin to change, and how we can begin to really take advantage of this moment in time and heal, and really begin to operate, and walk powerfully in our purpose, and powerfully in who God has created us to be. So there is a lot of opportunity in this, and I do think like conversations like this, and with different people from different perspectives, to begin to talk about, okay, so what opportunities can be created, and when can we start to have some of these conversations, and bringing children in so that they can give voice to their conversations, because we know, and I think you were speaking to this. Yeah, sometimes it's very difficult to understand the experience, really to talk about it in the language of trauma, but children know what they have been through, and how it has been hard for them, and also how it's impacting them. So I would say that.
Okay, so Elder Mark, what do you say then to people who are and then two, on the other side of that conversation, people are saying, well, we can't help these people, African American people, they don't want to help themselves. They killing themselves in spite of the trauma and the injustice. What Bishop Holly spoke. Is left to the state in twofold. One, if you don't properly discipline is sent, that quote unquote, we have chokeholds, we have murder after murder, and they have this immunity just to snuff out the lives of people who are just trying to deal with the vicissitudes of the trauma and of their experience. So what do you say to that, Pastor Mark? Do you have are you on mute, or did I mute you? I think, yeah, you have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
As you were talking, I caught bits and pieces of it. What did you would like me to speak to?
Edited version, because it goes in and out. What do you say to people, one that says as Pastor Mark Bishop spoke to earlier, but now they have a new paradigm where if you are not parenting properly, the state is going to take them away from you and then put them in an institutional system, foster care, whatever. And then secondarily, the police is going to discipline them. And they're going to discipline them to the extent that now with these chokeholds, punitively imprisoning them, not rehabilitating, causing greater pain on top of pain, trauma on top of trauma, and making them lose their lives.
There has to be great advocacy. Buffy, can you hear me?
You were breaking up a little bit, but now we can hear you.
Dr. Carla, can you hear me?
Now I can, yeah. I just heard that, but I think you're breaking up a little bit. You look stuck right now.
A lot of, but
I just heard that, but I think
yeah.
try to say. Let me see. Try to talk, and I'll let you know if we can hear you.
There must be greater parental advocacy, meaning people who can intervene. There's got to be more intervention, meaning parental intervention. Even if a parent per se isn't that particular child's parent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm gonna try to type it in the chat, see if that comes up there.
We hear you though.
Because that's even buffering as I'm trying to type. Oh, you hear me?
Yeah.
That's even getting stuck. We have to create more alliances amongst the community. We say the beloved community. There must be greater alliances, meaning fathers and mothers who have reared children per se become more instrumental in families that quote unquote had a dysfunctional environment. Like you were saying, maybe where the father wasn't there or the mother was there. We need more community cooperative effort. Remember the concept it takes a village to raise a child? We must really implement that in a fresh new way, but still governing ourselves with the principles that work, which is love. You know, most kids that have been traumatized, the only thing one of the main components that's gonna help them is to sense that unconditional love, that you're not judging them and not charging them that is their fault. You know, some children are traumatized because they think it's something they did, and it wasn't because of them. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So they, we have to reinforce in our children the gifts that they are to us as a family and the gifts that they are to humanity. We have to reverse the negative narrative with positive reinforcement. I mean, they must be flooded. They must be literally flooded with positive reinforcement, positive confidence builders, things to affirm them, to reassure them, to give them the confidence. The Bible says, as Jeremiah, plans, plans to prosper, plans of hope, a future, and an expected end. We got to let them know, regardless of what they've been through, you were still born on purpose to fulfill your God ordained purpose. You're not an accident. You're not an accident. What we say, doctor, and my brother, what we say and how we say it makes all the difference in the world.
Very much so. Because when you, I know, especially working in the school environment, when I was telling the children one time, about where I went to school and how I was brought up. I was brought up in the 70s, and they found it so hard to believe that even in the 70s, the teachers still referred to you as you people, and the N-word and so forth and so on. It's like, well, racism wasn't like that in the 70s. I said, yes, it was. Especially the fact my mother used to send me to the other side of New York to go to school, where the average person in my school, their parents owned a business or they worked on Fifth Avenue or whatever like that. And so when you try to talk to the children now and you try to share your experiences with them, we have to really be careful, because back when we were growing up, the teachers could still say, I'm gonna pray for you, or the teachers could still speak to you concerning the religious dynamic. But now you can, literally, you can be brought up on charges for bringing up the religious dynamic in school today, and definitely lose your job. But when I look at school now, and not even just school, when I look at the world today, one of the biggest problems that we have in the world today, and a lot of times we just break it off to millennials and so forth and so on, but based upon the times and the signs of the times, everybody is spending, a lot of people are spending their time trying to tear down or refute the foundation that we've always had. And the foundation that we've always had, especially quote unquote, the Black experience, was the church, was the house of God, the word of God. But now we spend more time, even in the Black church, trying to say, or trying to debate and tear down what our foundation was, how we were raised, how God brought us up. And so because we spend so much time fighting that, we're taking so much time to go away from it. And it's almost like we've made a career out of looking for a better way to do it than the way that excuse me, it was proven to us that it could work. And so we have got to figure out some kind of way to get our children back, not necessarily not just into the house of God, but back into the heart of God, to the mindset of God, as to where we're not feeding them wives' tales anymore. We're not telling them, well, we couldn't go to the movies or we couldn't have boyfriend and girlfriends because. Give them the truth, give them sound doctrine, but still turn them back towards God.
Amen.
Me and you are good, Doc. They on freeze mode.
I think it's their Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Someone was relating to what you just said. He said, as you said, what you say and how you say it means a lot. The word says, I instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with my eyes. Wherefore, comfort yourselves together and edify one another, even also ye do. So,
we I remember coming up, my pastor, my bishop, my father, he used to tell us this, and this works even in and I live by this. He would always say, I can show you better than I can tell you. And that is the way that, that's the way, excuse me, that I live it now, even with my children. I tell my daughter, if you see me doing it, okay, because at this point I can't tell you don't you do that, but you're watching me do it. I can't tell you don't smoke if I'm a smoker. I can't tell you don't be a drug addict if I use drugs. But I remember when we were growing up, the understanding was do as I say and not as I do. That was my father's, my biological father. That was his golden rule, because I said so. Yeah, if you say the word "but" out of your mouth, I'm gonna knock you in the floor. Nothing. I ain't got nothing to say. I'm good. I'm good. But there was always a but. And so now the time has totally changed. The tide has totally changed. We can no longer afford to tell our children what I said or what I say is good enough. We have to show our children, and we can't show our children what's right if we're blaming our children for the wrong in our lives. Like in my family, the bulk of our family were women, because um, there was 16 children in my mother's generation. 16. The bulk
That's
of
a
them were
large family. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bulk of them were female. Unfortunately, the bulk of them were also either widowed or divorced. So I grew up in a family that was basically reared by a strong woman presence. But it was because of how my grandfather raised my aunts and my mother, that strong woman presence also made it understood there's just certain things that ain't going to work. There's just certain things that are not going to, they're not going to happen. And as my generation came along, there were strong men that came in that the Lord blessed us as children to have, like Elder Diva, Overseer Diva, and other cousins that I had. They were strong men. They were mentors to us. Now, Elder Diva and I are first cousins, but both of my first cousins are like old enough to be my parents. My mother was the baby of 16, and me, my brother, and my cousin, who is also a pastor, we're like the babies of our generation. So we had, we had some men to come along, but the bulk of us were raised by women. But because we had a strong grandfather who taught his daughters to be strong for themselves, whether they found the right man or not, that really helped us in excuse me, in coming along. So to say we couldn't, like, for us to come up and say, well, we can't do what we do, or we can't do what we want to do because the white man this or the white man that didn't fly in our family. You couldn't, like, Overseer Diva's mother, you could not tell her I can't do what the other kids do, because her answer for that would be why. If it's not something that's against the Lord, why can't you do that? And so that's what we've got to start putting back into our homes first, because you can go to school and tell all the black kids in the world that they can make it, but if you're not showing them how to make it, you're lying, and you're not being real.
Yeah. As you were talking, I just kind of want to lift up, because I'm in agreement with you in terms of the mentoring. And as we talk about this, and, really more so solution focused, is that even for us as a community, lifting up the models that are already there.
Right.
You know, when we talk about our children, that there are children that love the Lord
Hmm.
at a young age.
Yes.
And there are children that are excelling in school. There are children that are active in the community. There are parents that are divorced, but they've learned how to co-parent.
Right. Right.
And I
Right.
think part of a solution and part of something that, you know, not that we don't do it, but I think we can continue to do it more and flood, you know, the airways with it, is the models of what is going well.
Right.
Because there's this technique, even in therapy, it's called solution focus.
Okay.
It looks at, okay, so you're having a problem, but what are the exceptions to the problem? When are things going well? And therefore, let's focus on that and let's see, why is this going well and how can we replicate it? How can we do more of that? So I think, you know, even as we're talking about dad drama and dad trauma and mama drama,
Sometimes it's both.
yeah, and it sometimes it's definitely both, and we know that the mama drama is about trauma.
Right.
But I think even in the drama and even in the trauma, there are so many stories of resiliency. There's stories of overcoming. There's stories of how I turned this around. There's stories of how this got
Right.
addressed. How, despite the adversity, that children, you know, went on to become, you know, whatever their dream was for them to become business owners or whatever it is. And so I think a part of our conversation is also highlighting what's going well, what is working, and doing more of that in our community.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, because like right now, the big thing in the world is Black Lives Matter,
Hmm.
and as an educator, I can't walk into school. Black
Hmm.
Lives Matter. Black
Hmm.
Lives Matter. I can't do that because there are Vietnamese lives, there are Caucasian lives, Latino lives, so forth and so on. So if like I walk into school and I go on a rant and rave, that could possibly be taken as me being racist.
Or legal ramifications, even
Exactly.
yeah.
And so what we have to what we have to look at now is, and don't get me wrong, I totally agree with Black Lives Matter. I also totally agree with All Lives Matter, as long as you remember that Black lives are a part of those all lives. And but we have got to get to the point where we, as the Black lives, have to matter to each other first. And I'll give an example. You can't walk around with a Black Lives Matter T-shirt and sell drugs to Black people. You can't walk around with a Black Lives Matter T-shirt on and then be the leader of a gang that leads your gang against the renegade gang, which is predominantly Black. At that point, you're buying into what they say when they say y'all are not even important to yourselves. Black on black crime is bigger than anything that we've ever done to you. You all, you know what I'm saying? And then at the same time, we can't spend all of our time blaming what they do or how they treat us on how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other. Well, you have some say, well, I was raised in these streets. I'm a part of these streets, and all I've ever seen is so forth and so on. Okay, that might work up until your 13th birthday, but now it's up to you, to make a choice. And we've also have to go into teaching our children your choices matter, because your choices have ramifications. Choose to do right. Right doesn't always happen to you, but you choose to do right, then you can expect right. But if you choose to do wrong, the only thing you need to expect out of life is what's wrong.
Mhm.
and we've gotten to the point. I heard I think it was Bishop Carlton Pearson said years ago, when the Lord is ready to move in the church, the devil turns it into a civil rights movement.
Mhm.
And I can't. That's not exactly how he said it, but basically, when God is giving us an opportunity to come up, the enemy comes in and turns it into a race war, or turns it into a social war, or whatever like that. And the problem is we fall for it every time because we don't take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm not in disagreement with you. I think there's a lot of ways to um, look at and talk about the situation, and I think it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. So it
Right.
doesn't have to, and I know you know that it doesn't have to be one thing or another. I think absolutely, we have to. It always stops with us. The buck stops with us, and we have to take responsibility and to know that you know, the only ones that are going to really save us, Jesus is going to save us, and then we have to save ourselves.
Save
I
yourself.
worked in government for a long time, and at an executive level, and I already knew before going into government that we really needed to um, really be about our own community. But when I got there, it just confirmed everything that I knew, that the government is not going to help
Right.
us. It doesn't have the capacity to. Um, and again, because of racism, it's already, systematic and structural.
Yeah.
And there's already a mindset and a way of viewing our community and viewing who we are or who we aren't. So we definitely have to, really, I think there's a lot, and I said this again, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think there's a lot of organizations. I think there are churches. I think there are individuals that are already doing that. They are mentoring. They are, teaching children, talking to children about, what's right and wrong, and providing resources and opportunities and all of that. Um, I think, one of the things about the Black Lives Matter is that in some ways it does reinforce that we are kings and we are queens, that we are respectable, that we are worthy, that we are all of that. And so, and there's another side of the social movement that emboldens us. Yes, I understand it can swing to, you know, it can swing in respect of, I also develop an arrogance, or I begin to only see it as, we are the only ones that matter. Although I believe for the majority, our hearts are not there.
Yeah.
Most of us really understand that all lives matter, but we're focused on the lives that aren't mattering.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, in terms of strategic, this moving forward is having this alliance and this, I guess it's just an alliance of who is really moving forward in the direction that we are going and capitalizing on that. I said that before, but I really do think that this is the hour for us to have a strength-based approach. Yes, there's black on black crime. Most of the time, when people are caught, they go to jail. They, there is justice, that's served, as opposed to many other communities that also have. There's lots of white on white crime,
Yes.
And crime in other populations. And we're just saying we want an even playing field. We want. I mean, we could go on. We could look at crack versus cocaine. That's so many people who are currently incarcerated because laws were written that were more severe for us.
Yes.
So I'm saying all of that to say that I think conversations like this are helpful as we begin to say, well, let's take the next step. Like what, okay, so what is the next step?
Right. Yeah.
What is
That
it coming together? What are the agencies and communities? Where are the mentoring groups? And, do they need funding? And
Yeah.
then going to places like there's groups that have started, like, Black Business Owners of New Jersey. Who are the philanthropists that have the grants, that can start to funnel? I think, you're kind of talking like that. I know there's another woman who talks about, from a financial perspective, from the emotional perspective, from the spiritual perspective, and where are the resources?
Yes.
And to begin to say, okay, so this was part one. Part two, let's come back to the table to say, okay, now this is what's on the table. These are the resources, and this is how we can start to build, or let's even target a certain community.
Yeah.
A certain neighborhood, and start to flood that neighborhood so that we can start to uplift that neighborhood. But I think we're basically saying the same thing, and I think it's kind of also having the conversations from multiple levels, which are all true.
Right. Right.
Well, one of the things that must happen, well, two, is that we have to be, just like racism is systemic, we have to be
You went out.
Yeah, you were going good for a minute.
For a minute.
Migrate, I would say.
There he is.
Yeah, migration from the deep south. The first migration, second migration. Yeah. So when I talk, I speak in the historical stat. That's part of my training. So yes, it is migrated. So when they migrated from the south, the first migration, second migration, they came in groves. They came in, okay, you systems that we have to return to, which we see other cultures doing that, and we see them prospering because we have left the foundation of our training, which is one, religious, God. So we have come to America, and some of us have been able to grow and prosper and advance, and that was because of God. But those of us who have been able to do that, we forgot those that were behind. We left so many people behind, and we broke the system. So just like institutional racism is systemic, we have to recreate family systems in the Black community and the Black culture, because we have what it takes, but we have to combat, like this book, The Talented 10. The lawyers go and fight for those, or fight injustice that are pushed against our community, to politicians to get in place to curtail and fight against and stand against those policies, because it's not that we're losing, because I think someone said in the that we don't have it. We had the mindset of the 60s, the 70s, the still are the greatest producers of wealth, but we're not producing that wealth for our
I know what he's saying is good too, because I can feel it.
I feel it too. I feel it.
Because if I was, I think what it is he's going on Wi-Fi. But if I could get him to just plug that laptop into that router, oh, what a wonderful world! because I use I use my laptop on these calls, but I plug it into the router for the for the sake, especially because if I'm not mistaken, there are a lot of storms going up and down the East Coast right now.
Yeah.
And so this is probably where a lot of this interference is coming from.
Right. But I'm on Wi-Fi.
Oh, you're on your Wi-Fi too? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi.
Hey, but I know so then you got the blessing then. But I know part of what he was talking about, things being things being systemic. I said this to my daughter and I, we talk a lot, especially about what's going on. One of the things that I said to her is that and I'm not saying this in a racist standpoint, but I'm just using it as just to deal with what's the times. Caucasian people, white people, however you want to say it, they're strategic. African Americans are passionate.
Right.
The problem with passion is there is not a lot of thought in your passion. There is not a lot of wisdom in our passion. And so what usually winds up happening, it's not every case, but what usually winds up happening, it takes a moment when we are done totally wrong, or when we have to quote unquote fight back in order for us to get up and move as African Americans. Whereas Caucasian America is always thinking. They're always plotting or always thinking about the next thing that's coming, the next thing that's going to happen. Now, we've had some great minds. We've had who have tried to teach us, or who have tried to help us to learn how to become strategic in our thinking. But often those type of men or those type of leaders are pushed to the side as angry Black people. Like and some may agree with me, some may not, but like your Dick Gregory's, your Cornel West's, your your Jesse Jacksons, your Malcolm X's. These are people who made it who figured out how to get into the system and work out and work from the inside out and try to educate us on in either way. The problem is we took it, we got angry, and we went someplace else with it. We have got to learn, especially as African Americans, how to remain passionate while being strategic. We've got to figure out ways, like we had the blackout day the other week, where was not spending any money, and that's good. The problem is, just because you don't go spend money with Best Buy today, if there is no Black-owned market in your neighborhood, what you didn't go buy from Walmart today, you're gonna go buy from Walmart one day this week. You might have killed Walmart's day. You didn't kill Walmart's week. And because you didn't kill Walmart's week, you really had no effect on Walmart's quarter. You had no effect on Walmart's fiscal year. And so we've got to figure out, okay, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's come together and do this. Let's come together and do that. But we've got to figure out how to be strategic in what we do, as opposed to just passionate about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was what Dr. King, the Poor People's Campaign, really broke something in the system, the economic system of America, because they boycotted the buses for 367 days, I think, somewhere, 67, 68. And that really cut to the bottom line.
Yes.
That they had that consensus. They had that we're going to work as a collective, not as an individual.
Right.
And that's where we have lost our way, in that we have the infrastructure, we have the foundation, we have the wealth, we have the wherewithal to pull it together, but we don't have the mutual respect
Yeah.
for our culture that we are willing to support someone of the caliber of a Dr. King who's speaking truth. And when I say someone of the caliber of Dr. King, meaning that he wasn't perfect, but he had a vision, a clear vision that wasn't just for quote unquote his people, but it was inclusive of that which the system had created, we versus them. And that is still perpetuating itself today, which is the 5% of the people own 95% of the wealth in the country, and then it's us. So that's what they hear, and this movement that's going on. It's not just about Black Lives Matter. It's about all lives that are frustrated with the lie. When you talk about COVID, back to our original theme, and then we're gonna cut it, and then we have to do this again. And I want to, and I heard your comment about plugging into the router instead of yeah. So I have to get the connectors for my Apple to plug into the router.
That's that devil. That's that devil.
Well, you got to have that connector, and then our Elder Lewis, who was there. This conversation was so important and so vital,
Right?
in that we got to continue to have this conversation, and the conversation has to permeate, or at least be introduced to all of our mindsets, so that we can have a different thought. Paradigm shifts don't come about until we have a perception shift.
Yes.
Have what we perceive is happening. You can perceive that something's wrong, and you're trying to figure out, oh, what happened? What's going on? Well, I'm frustrated. Yes, but that's childish. That's how a child acts.
Right.
A child knows that something is. You told them this, and you did that. They know something is wrong, but they can't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking I've been spending time with my granddaughter here, one of my youngest granddaughters, and we go walk the dog. I've been teaching her how to walk the dog, and so they she said to me something, and I said something back to her. She said, I don't understand. I don't understand what you're saying. She's 4 years old, and that's where a lot of us are. We don't understand what each other are saying, but then on the other side, my response to her was, okay, this is what I'm saying. I said it to her in a way that she could understand what I was saying. And she said, oh, granddaddy. And that's what we have to do with one another. We have to take time with one another. Like Du Bois said, the talented 10, we are responsible to bring up those who don't have the capacity that we have. Because that's how we were able to get to where we are, by the support of our community.
Yeah.
I went to college because my brothers and sisters, my uncles and aunts, they all chipped in when it was needful, and they was able to. They saw the need, the importance to give me some money to buy some books, or just to keep on keeping up, to have a few dollars. And we have to go back to that instead of just going down the road and realizing and thinking that a false sense of security in drug money will help us to bring ourselves up. Very few go the way of selling illicit drugs and illegal drugs and come out of that lifestyle.
Right.
Very few will have that turn in that perception. So I'm going to thank you all for this, and thank everybody who participated today. This is a wonderful conversation, and I'm going to get some some support on my technology and try to improve my iMac stuff. I used to tell my students I hate Androids, but in times like this, it seems like Androids just stream itself.
Yes.
Into it, kind of kicks back into it, and you never. Yeah.
It goes back to that whole strategic and passionate thing. See, Apple was strategic in what they did. They created a device that only they can fix, and you can only pay them to get working the right way. That's That's strategic.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very, very strategic.
Well,
very effective.
Samsung career.
Very ludicrous. Very lucrative.
So that's China versus Korea.
Basically.
Okay. God bless everyone.
God bless. Thank you so much.
And Pastor Lewis,
Bishop, good talking with you.
Yes, good talking.
He gained the whole world and lose his own soul. Remember, you only got one soul, and give that soul to the Lord. God bless you. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Wide world, lose his soul, fortune and fame, riches and gold, only have one soul. What would it profit a man to gain the wide world and lose his soul? Fortune and fame, riches and gold, only have one soul. Oh, one soul, that's all you have. One soul, one soul, one word.
I think that's
one soul, fortune and fame, riches and gold. You have one soul. You only have one soul. Oh, yeah. Only have you only have one soul. Only have one.